Anybody that don't know, still need convincing. Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, has made that country so poor. Seriously, this is not a joke. On average, every Venezuelan has lost nearly 10 kilograms of weight because they can't afford to eat. That's the same model that Julius Malema is touting for in South Africa. So we may not need Ozempic, we may need Julius Malema. But, and I couldn't help thinking of those poor people taking Ozempic for sugar diabetes. They thought the weight they lost was the leg they lost, but it was the Ozempic. Well, listen, I've got to answer. Right, let's move on to our probably South Africa's most popular TV analyst. We miss him terribly on television, but we still get to see him on social media, and we're very, very happy and honored to have him here today. The man who started speaking truth to power, and that is the one and only JJ Tabane. JJ, thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you very much for inviting me. I think it was a setup to get me to speak after Rob. I agree with him on many things, but for different reasons. And also the drug that you just talked about, I think I will need it. I'll take it, and then next time I speak here, maybe I'll have a better tummy. He asked me whether I wrote the speech, and I don't usually write the speech. You have watched my TV shows, they think, is this guy scripted? Or it's a 15-minute monologue where I talk to myself. And a couple of people like Mbazima Shilowa said, I've never seen somebody talk to themselves for 15 minutes. But I would like to talk to you about the state of our nation, because that's why we are here. And thank you for coming up so early to listen to what you probably already know. It's a question of that we actually do still need to talk. If you didn't need to talk, you wouldn't be here for breakfast. And this talks about the national dialogue. It shouldn't cost R1 billion, but we need to talk. Because often we talk past each other. Our state of a nation is depressed. It's distressed, and it's leaderless. Those are my three captions of how we should understand ourselves right now. We're distressed and depressed mostly because of people, half of our population lives below the breadline. Right? And I don't expect any of you who came to a breakfast, 5-star breakfast like this to understand that. When somebody's below the breadline, literally it means you don't have money for bread. You're below the breadline. Right? People like yourself will not really appreciate that after 2-course breakfast. Why are we leaderless? It's easy to say, oh, leaderless because, we're led by lunatics. In fact, Rob says, it was very polite today. I don't know what happened to him. But in one of the podcasts that I listened to, of what he was saying, he said the lunatics are running the asylum. Right? I think for me that's an easy answer. Right? That government is also useless and private sector is also fantastic. And later on I'll deal with that myth a little more. But we are leaderless across the board. We're not just leaderless in government. We're leaderless in civil society. We're leaderless in business. That's why Rob is tired. He's now taking a break because he believes he's only one of 2 or 3 leaders who are speaking. Right? And we are leaderless in government. Let me start with civil society. I'm sure half of you are not civil society, so you'll find it comfortable to listen to that. If you look at the role of churches, synagogues, what is the other one? Mosques, etc. Right? Where people gather for believing in God, like Gwede Mantashe was saying to Rob. Those institutions have been made to be toothless. if you consider how the church in particular was at the forefront of bringing us to 1994, in terms of mobilizing society, highlighting to the world how evil apartheid was and so on, you wonder what happened to these people after 1994? They became VIPs. There's nothing I hate in an event like something called accreditation, where you have a big, thing, it's a laminated thing that's written VVIP. And our religious leaders have become the faith leaders from all persuasions, became VIPs. So they wouldn't tell these politicians, but you are corrupt and you are stealing. Because that won't be polite for them to say it from a pulpit. My Archbishop, I'm Anglican, so, he would say from a pulpit on Easter, once in a blue moon, people must stop and what have you. But in between the other things, he's having tea with those same leaders. And it's not as hard as he would be on the pulpit. Right? And I'm not just talking about churches, I'm talking about NGOs, youth clubs. I don't know when last did you hear of youth movement saying, hard things. I mean, it's been 10 years since the fees must fall and the roads must fall, which was an exception after 20 years of nothing. So we are leaderless in civil society. The civil society should be up in arms with what is happening in South Africa now. They should be up in arms. But they are not. And one wonders, what has happened to activism? Activism has disappeared. Right? And you may wonder, but what has this got to do with the business and the economy not growing? It has everything to do with it. Because if we don't have activism, right, then business that is supposed to transform won't care. There's nothing pressurizing them to transform. Right? I work for a listed company here that will remain nameless. I was the only black person on their exco, 21 billion rand company, top exco, all white males. Right? And they didn't know what I was talking about. I came to a first meeting. These guys are talking billions. Yeah, we made billion there. We didn't make a billion there. We made a profit there and so on. And then when my turn comes, they say, they close their books. They finished talking about money. Now they say, let's hear. This guy is brought here, but they're saying he's going to talk about transformation. They give you a nice title called Group Executive Corporate Affairs. They've closed their books. And then it's my turn, and I say, okay, guys, I understand that you've been making profit for 40 years every year, and you have paid bonuses to everybody. So I said, oh, okay. Well, can we say to all of your managers that if they don't transform this place by 20%, 20% of their bonuses will go. They open their books, they say, where's the money going to come from? The activism has died. And I'm glad to hear people like Rob saying, I'm capitalist activism. I don't know whether there's such a thing. Capitalist activism is like an oxymoron of some sort. But nevertheless, he's an activist. We need people like that in business as well. And they are missing. It's not an accident that 62%, I want to get the number right because I heard you on some podcast, you criticized somebody who said 98% of people in corporate South Africa are white. I don't think this room would prove that wrong particularly. But anyway, 62% of people who... No, I'm being serious. It's a formal report, not by Labor Department, but by KPMG. Okay, I don't know whether they're still credible. But anyway. But at least there are two reports. There's one from Labor and one from the KPMG saying 60%, right, of all new promotions and all new appointments in the new South Africa have been to white people. Now, even if you didn't say, well, whites are 7%, so everybody must be 7%, it can be so extreme as to suggest that 1994 did not happen. But it's happening because we are leaderless in business. And people are not able to see that when the buying power of South Africans have changed complexion, your business model must also change complexion in order to be profitable. We are leaderless in government. I can spend 3 days on that one. There's no need. We all know. We've seen it. We see it in our potholes. We see it in if, no water in Johannesburg from time to time, no electricity, right? And it's actually what I want to call a charitable explanation to say the ANC doesn't care. Actually, the ANC cares, they're just incompetent. You must distinguish. When you say they don't care, you're excusing them. These guys have become so incompetent, it's not funny. And a little later on, I'm going to just give you some of the numbers that will just show you, not because I'm shouting, but because the numbers are glaringly clear that we are leaderless in government. What has happened on Sunday shows you don't need to even go beyond Sunday. Right? If you are running, some of you are running business, I assume. If somebody does something wrong, you call them and say, hey, I hear that you've done 1, 2, 3. Is it true? And if they say it's true, and it's something that you can deal with by discipline, you say to them, I'm giving you a warning, like I gave my assistant a warning for inviting some of my guests to this breakfast late. I didn't call a commission of inquiry. I just said, no, it's your warning, because you're making me look bad. People are going to say I invited them at the last minute, when in fact I should have invited them 5 days ago. So Cyril should have called the people around the room and fired. He's allowed to fire a minister. It's not labor relations. Even if it was, the money he's going to spend on the commission of inquiry will be a fraction of what he could spend at the CCMA if that guy went to complain at the CCMA. But it shows you what? Leaderlessness and indecisiveness in government. So I'm saying that phenomenon is across the board. It's in civil society, it's in business, and it's in government. And that's why our economy is growing at 0. It's polite to say 0.1. 0, it's not growing. In fact, by the way, economic growth all over the world is calculated on a basis of averages and estimation. So it means if you are at 0.1, you could actually be at minus before you know it. You should actually be in a recession. Just that nobody declares a recession. The people don't like to declare a recession. But if you are growing at 0.1, frankly, if calculations are made properly by actuaries, you could actually be at minus. We are not growing. And it's not the fault of government only. It's the fault of all of us. Because our activism has disappeared. We think it's okay for my company to have a completely lily-white board. And there's no problem. Or just have 2 black tokens on the board and we think, yeah, but we have complied with B, it don't bother us. Right? And I want to talk about that BE thing because there is a big narrative that's how useless it is. It's going to destroy the economy and so on. In fact, this is the first myth I want to deal with straight away, because I'm sure it's in all of your minds. You say, oh no, that's why America is punishing us and so on. Why did we need BEE? We needed BEE because for 40 odd years, for more than 4 decades, right, there was a 90% of this population that was disadvantaged. How do we redress? It's not a swear word. You redress by making sure that you balance the scales one way or another. Don't reverse discrimination. Go and tell that to America, who still have affirmative action after 200 years. No, you don't tell them to America. Okay, you tell it to us. In 30 years, we must finish quickly and move on. It's not going to happen. Right? The statistics that I'll talk a little later about, let me just pick up, if I pick the statistics of unemployment, inequality, we're the worst unequal society in the world. I don't know whether it's supposed to be a badge of honor, right? And 60% unemployment of young people. All those things are time bombs. And we're not going to diffuse them by pretending that they don't exist. Secondly, I don't think we're going to get them by a national dialogue that's going to have a big bang decision. Ask yourself, when you are running a company, and a number of you are running a multi-million, multi-billion company, what are you doing in that environment to redress? Are you using the same suppliers you used in 1960 that were used by your grandfather? Are you hiring the same complexion of people who your grandfather hired when they founded the company in 1970? Because then you are pretending that it's still 1980. And I think for me, that is the nub of the issue. That we hope that the Messiah is going to come somewhere to save our situation. It's therefore a myth to think you can get rid of BEE now without setting off these time bombs that I've talked about. The reality is, I've not heard from wonderful activists like Rob and others what the alternative to BEE is. In a sense that if you look at it in specific terms, we're saying, if you are a South African company, your board must be South African. You understand? It can't look European. It has to look South African. Your management control, the company must be in the control of a diversity of South Africans. Your employment, what do you call it, mix from skills to diversity to culture must be diverse. You must impart skills to people that work for you. Don't say, oh, no, usually these people don't need qualifications. They must say, this one has 10 years experience. Yeah, no, you must train these youngsters, and I'm not interested in spending money to them. In fact, companies used to say, what if we spend money on them and they leave? That's a narrow approach. Because the question is, what if you don't spend money on them and they stay? What happens then? Because you need to think of the country, not just your little company. Right? And then you must invest in communities. Not enough to put a big shop right in the middle of a rural area, you're making a lot of money there, but the school next door doesn't have a toilet and kids there are drowning in the toilet. And you are making money out of that same community. Now, if somebody can give me an alternative to these 5 things, what are you going to do? Are you saying to me, ignore who owns, ignore who run the company, ignore who you hire, ignore what skills or enterprise development you are making, ignore what you are spending on communities? Yes, BEE was implemented badly. In fact, most reference to the failure of BEE is that a few people have benefited. So you are only dealing with ownership. Remember, when the first codes were put in place in 2007, a little later, I think 2 or 3 years down the line, we realized that there was a lot of fronting. Hence the issue broad-based black economic empowerment. How is it broad-based? Don't just give it to the connected cronies. But of course, people are still trapped in a warp that says, no, it's still connected cronies. They fail to look at all these other 5 elements that generate the same jobs that you are talking about, uplift communities, improve the skills levels of people who are working for you, etc., etc. And I'm saying that these are the things we need to focus on, not just be in a big bubble, but be focused on these 5. And you realize that, in fact, all you need is a new government and a new approach, a new mental framework that can make these 5 elements of economic growth actually mean something for the economy. The fact that we are a junk status economy, grey listed and so on, it's a combination of all of our efforts. Because where's the private sector? Go and read the annual reports of the top 50 listed companies and how much cash they are sitting on. They're saying, hey, we can't invest, these guys are useless, there's political instability, we can't take our cash and put it here because, unlike a factory, the cash you can take to London, the factory, you can't pick it up and go after you've built it here. So there is a sense of reluctance by the private sector to invest. That's part of what the private sector must then get out of. The sense of activism for civil society to mobilize people in a different mindset of less dependency. Right? And then a government that can actually work. Before the elections, I was, and Mike will tell you, I was one of the few lunatics who said we need a government of national unity. People said, no, that's crazy. If you have a national government of national unity, to be like bringing the ANC back by back door. And in fact, I had a show where I had all the leaders were saying they don't want GNU. right? Of course, they changed their mind very quickly in June when the results came. I'll tell you why I think we need a GNU. I don't believe in any of the parties to run this place alone. Because it doesn't matter what you think of the EFF or MK. There are good people in all the parties, including the DA. I thought John Steenhuisen, I called him a dumb cop, so he never came to my show to talk to me. But the reason I call him a dumb cop is because he thought that if Malema stands in a stadium and shouts something, guy who has 9%, 99% of the black people will go into the streets and kill white people. I thought that's stupid. Because Malema has been with us for a long time, and he still has 9%. Even if you brought him into a kind of government, he'll have 9% say. There are good people in all the parties. I know it sounds like a Mandela, what Mandela would say. It doesn't matter. But it's true, right? And so the country is in such a crisis that we need not put our faith only in politics. We need to put our faith in ourselves. In every corner where you are. And that's part of the problem, that we are not shining the light where we are. And we're hoping for a Messiah somewhere. Right? So I hope I've dealt with this myth about BEE a little bit. It's not a scary word if you break it down. It's actually something that if you embrace it, it may actually build our businesses. By the way, there are very few countries where when you get there, they don't ask you to partner with the locals to do business. Just that in South Africa, you call it BEE and we turn it into a swear word. I work for this multi-billion company. We want to try and do business in Kenya. There you partner with a local for 50%, not even the 30% that has been asked here. In those places, not called BEE, it's called indigenization. So we have this South African exceptionalism sometimes that confuses me. You want things to happen here. Some of these American companies that want to be excluded from BEE, in other countries, they go there and partner with locals, 50-50.
All the locals, not some of them.
Yeah. No. Most of them, when they go around the world, they know they have to abide by the laws of that country. They can't dictate to that country, this should be your laws. So why should they dictate here? Right? So there's a balance here that we need to strike. Actually, BEE was very apologetic on international multi. They even created a category called equity equivalence. In other words, you don't have to comply. All you have to do is take what will be equivalent of that equity and invest it in communities, build schools, maybe buy computer labs and so on. But some of the companies abused it, of course. I worked for a company that used to do computers in rural areas. We got to a place in the Eastern Cape where one of our big telecoms companies, I will not mention, I don't have to be rude every day, put computers in a school in the Eastern Cape where there was no electricity. But wrote it in their annual report that we have donated 100 computers to these poor schools in the Eastern Cape. So it's a checkbook mentality. Right? So sometimes these things that we hate about BEE is to try and get us to say, let's close the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And not think that our big walls in Bryanston are going to protect us from the uprising that will happen if these time bombs go off. We must not think that way. We must say, how do we build a country together, right, so that all of us can benefit from it? Then the second thing is this thing about privatization, and I'm going to wrap up now with it, just dealing with 2 or 3 more myths. Just give everything to the private sector. My friend Rob here made the example of SAA. I used to work for SAA, by the way. And I know exactly what you mean. It was destroyed. In fact, the guy who was the CEO in the 80s sold the whole aircraft. And interestingly, he was from America. The same America that says, no, stop being. An American chap was the CEO of SAA. He sold the whole fleet and leased the aircraft instead. Or something like that, and then got a payout of some millions and left. So the destruction started there. It didn't start by state capture. started by this top CEO of aviation. And I think there's a whole book about it. I won't bore you with the detail. Right? But I'm just giving that as an example that aviation now is going fine. Everybody's flying, but you actually don't need SAA. We don't need an airline. You don't need an airline to be owned by the state. I have a different view. I think that you need to combine, or rather balance, developmental needs with commercial needs. Right? So that's what is in simple terms called public-private partnerships. Not say, oh no, private sector will do everything. Right? Because remember, and I can have a whole show on just on corruption alone to tell you that corruption, there's a corrupter and a corruptee. And often the corruptee can be from a business person who wants a tender of government. So they bribe the civil servant so that this company can get billions in a tender. Right? So corruption is on private sector and also in private sector, in public sector. Right? So you need the two to work together to build a country. Not say government must get out of the way. There's nothing like that in any state. Look at what we've just described with what Trump has done in the last 6 months. It was not government getting out of the way. It was government exactly getting into the way to make things go their way. So why should government get out of the way here? Government should not get out of the way. It must know which lane it is riding in, and not try to run things that are not its competency, right? But bring government and in a dynamic relationship, in a dynamic partnership, bring government and public sector together to build the economy. And telecom is I know there are not too many examples, but if there's a good example, we must mention it. Telecom was a good example. Right, of a public-private partnership. It's one of the profitable SOEs. It's one of the few SOEs that really give government back dividends. Why can't we do that with the other SOEs? Why must I pull my hair if you send me a Christmas card and I get it in Easter? Because you've got a post office that doesn't work. And a law that says if something is below 1 kilogram, it cannot be transported by a private. I mean, that's crazy law, right? So it's a myth then to say, give everything to the private sector, government must get out of the way. I think that's nonsense. I think you need both elements to come together into a dynamic relationship that can build the country. Rob talked about the pill that I can take to be better. And that brings me to NHI. I don't know whether I can get that in a clinic, this thing that he's talking about. Or I'll need to earn, maybe $1 billion like he has before I can get that pill. I'm sure it's not too expensive. 8,000 rand. 8,000 a month. That's somebody's salary. So they'll think, must I put money aside for the taxi, a train, some school fees, a data before I can have this pill? I'd rather have a big belly but not die. But anyway, the myth I was talking about is what you call a parallel health system. At the moment, we've got a parallel health system. I'm sure a quarter of you here are on classic or executive, for those who are brave in discovery. But it's 16% of the country that is actually on a decent medical aid or that kind of medical insurance. The rest have to queue at Baragwanath, where tomorrow they may not be bread or linen. That's unsustainable for the economy. Because if you are a head of a big company where you've got blue-collar workers who actually can be sick at any time and not have help, how is that going to increase your productivity? Sometimes we don't think about those things. We just say, no, we're not going to afford it. It's going to bankrupt the country. Yeah, sure. But I think what will eventually bankrupt us if we have made health such a commodity that only a few privileged people can have medical attention. 16%. I mean, it's actually pathetic that you've got almost 80% of your country that could die anytime on something that's preventable, in terms of preventable diseases. Right? And they will need 8,000 rand to have one pill to lose weight. I think we need to think carefully about it. And I don't have answers to say, oh, tomorrow everybody must have a medical aid. But to actually insist that we must continue a parallel system where your health needs are equal to your pocket is, for me, an unsustainable, even in the things that you want to do to grow the economy. Finally, the big thing about land, the issue of landlessness or poor access to land, right? That can be linked to food security and all of things that are related to having a piece of land. Is an unsustainable situation. I don't have an answer about whether or not it means you must take land, because if you take land, like we have seen in the last 20 years, where people are given farms and they don't know what to do with it. You know? There are lots of people. I mean, I live on a plot of 5-hectare plot. Please don't say this to anybody, because EFF will come after me. I'm still figuring out what I must do with my avocados. Okay, I didn't get it because I wanted to farm. I got it by accident. And I said, oh, this is 10 years earlier, so let me just take it. Maybe when I retire, which I'm about to do, then I'll plant some cabbages. But there are a lot of people who, with huge farms, they've let them go fallow. Right? So it's not an automatic answer that, oh, everyone has just get a piece of land and what? It's to say, what are you going to use it for? I had a good interview with a chap from AfriForum on my show about 4 years ago, and I asked him, look, man, let's talk about this thing about land. If you have got 30 hectares of land and you live on 2 hectares only, and you're farming on the 2 hectares, you have a farm, orange farm, it's in 2 or 3 hectares, and then you've got these 27 hectares that you are not using, would it be such a bad thing to share that 27 hectares with someone else? Or give it to government at a discount or whatever? No, you're not using it. It's land fallow. It's just big land. It's not even... No, you're not doing anything about it. I'm telling you a real scenario here. You are living on 2 hectares. 27 is empty land. It's just big grass. Next door, there are people who are starving who don't have a tomato. And I'm saying, can't you sell it at a discount? I'm not even saying give it away for free. He says, no, I think you are talking. That's why I was saying we talk past each other. Because when you talk generalities, give land back to the people, you stole it, give it back, we get lost in translation. But if you begin to be focused and say, oh, but I actually have 30 hectares. I live on 2 hectares. And there are people who are living under bridges. Can't I just give this land, give me 10% of this and so on, you know? I'll give it to my children's school fees. But somebody else doesn't starve. Would that be such a bad thing? And I'm saying that to talk like that doesn't need to cost R1 billion, but we need to talk. Let me, in conclusion, just give you something to go and think about. Before GNU, before last year, June, right? Where was the GDP? Think about it. Has it changed? I'm going to give you a few indicators of what should the state of the nation be. Inflation, right? Apparently it's now at 2.7%. Unemployment, I think it has remained the same, 32.5, 32.9, and they say this fancy term called extended rate, 43.1, which is actually the real rate. They're saying, you know, there are people who are discouraged, don't count them, or whatever it is. And in fact, the CEO of Capitec, God bless him, he says, in fact, the employment rate is much less, is 10%, which is totally crazy to even suggest. But anyway, I choose to listen to the statistician general, not Capitec. Right? Youth unemployment hasn't changed. Inequality measure, a badge of honor, most unequal society in the world. Infrastructure spend, can you remember Zuma wanted to spend 800 billion or budgeted 800 billion? I think Cyril has budgeted R1 trillion, but nobody has spent a cent of it. Or we don't know where it was spent, if it didn't go into the pockets of the Guptas. Education spend, apparently there's increased now to 32.3 billion. It used to be 31.8 billion. Right? Yeah, I don't know whether Kwahube argued for it. I don't know. Right? Cabinet size has increased. I think cabinet is 70 people or some crazy number. Right? So you can imagine how many billions are spent just on cabinet. Right? ESCOM debt. Rob has come up with a solution for ESCOM. I hope my friend Dan Marokani, who's one of the shining stars, by the way, of the new administration, will listen to him. Not everything is bad, is blood on the floor. No, there are certain pockets of excellence somewhere that are happening. We just don't have time to go through all of them. GDP to debt ratio, calamity. 1 billion rand a day being spent. That's still continuing, right? Contact crimes, I don't have to tell you, 57 murders. And so apparently they said it went down by 1%. Call comfort to all the dead bodies, daily dead bodies in our country. Murder rates has gone up. Rape, that's the one that is purely traumatic. 11,000 rapes or something in 3 months. Robbery, 443,000 robberies apparently. And apparently it has gone down by 10%. Another call comfort. If you still have 300,000 road robberies, you're not telling a good story, like you did in the Oval Office to say, please come and help us. For me, that is the state of the nation. Is distressed, is depressed, is leaderless, but it's leaderless across the board. And those leaders are ourselves. In each of our environments, we need to ask ourselves the question, how are we making, the life of a next South African better? And if we all did that, I'm sure we can look back, right, with a little bit of a tweak to our economic policies and look at an economy that is growing better in 5 to 10 years. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Good.